Welcome back to this track about music-related topics and the theme reality check. We continue with the reality check, looking into two projects that have
no one knows about, obviously.
two projects that we have selected because we were very curious how you both are doing on your path of setting up a structure kind of in parallel or in competition or whatever, something we can discuss, next to already existing bigger structures. And when my colleague, my name is M.eik Michalke, and I have put together this whole track together with my colleague M.eik Michalke. Sorry, I have not introduced myself yet. And we were curious in the track reality check about, we said this in the beginning of the day, we were interested in like musical diversity, scene diversity, but also kind of diversity in technical ideas or in service ideas or in like those organizational operations of the music and digital sphere. And why we have invited you both is because you both have set up an organization, which we're going to talk about, which at the same time critiques how things are going and sets up an alternative or tries to establish structures that kind of address this critique and do it differently, while much bigger, much more powerful, equipped with money and so on, structures exist already in the same field. And so we are curious how this is working for you. And so it's not about kind of this is not going to be like a startup pitch where we want to look just into two different business models where you find your niche and how do you do it. But we actually want to specifically look into this process of, can you actually, as we said in the title, kind of shift paradigms, like by doing a different type of organization. And so the two organizations that we want to look into is C3S, and this is represented by M.eik Michalke sitting next to me. So I'm now going to do your bios. You're a managing director of C3S, which is registered as a European cooperative society of music authors and performers. You are also doing a doctorate in psychology at the Heinrich Heine University in Düsseldorf. You make music in your own band, contribute to free and open source software projects, and you have initiated and organized the Open Music Contest in the mid-2000s.
Correct.
Welcome. And then we have the other project that we want to look into is Resonate, and is represented by Peter Harris. You have founded and are the director of Resonate. And Resonate is a streaming music platform that is cooperatively owned by all members. And you have been a web developer since the 90s and worked on many web projects for artists also. And you're also an occasional DJ and electronica producer.
Was before I had kids.
So I think there are also, I also noted, or even while thinking about your projects, I noted there are other things that you have in common. You're both cooperative, organized as a cooperative. And both working on with the conditions of artists and diversity, also diverse music culture at the center. And also you both address the issue of earning money with copyright, which is another difficult, I think, topic to deal with. So because not everybody maybe knows or is familiar with your projects exactly, I think we have to start with a little bit, like little short intro of I don't, and I'm actually open to who wants. Maybe we start with you because you're sitting next to me. With C3S. Since when are you? When have you started? Just to get an idea of time.
Yeah, the project officially started in 2010, so that's 9 years in the making now. We had a meeting as a delegation from Creative Commons Germany, at the German Patent and Trademark Office in Munich with the legal advisor of GEMA. And we discussed possibilities of getting Creative Commons licensing into GEMA so that GEMA members could use CC licenses for their own works if they choose so. And the longer we talked, the more it was obvious that this wouldn't happen, at least not quickly. And at one point, the legal advisor said something along the lines, if you don't like what GEMA is doing, then why don't you start your own collecting society? We're pretty sure he meant it as a joke, but when we left the meeting, we were looking at each other and were like, okay, tomorrow I set up a mailing list and then we'll discuss what we'll do next. And there have been a lot of copyright lawyers already in the team back then, so this was really something that we took serious. And we discussed really the next 2 years about concepts and had to look in all the laws that we needed to respect and so on, and had to find out how a collecting society actually is being built and what you need to do. And then a year later, in 2013, we had our founding assembly and became a European cooperative. I think we were officially the 13th European cooperative of all of Europe, because this legal form is pretty new. And then we received a grant from the European Union. We had a very successful crowdfunding campaign and doubled the money with a grant from the EU. Had 1 year of funding for the basis of the software infrastructure that we are now using. And the next big step was in 2016 when a EU directive on collecting societies was implemented in all the national laws, and only from then on the German Patent and Trademark Office, which is the official government supervisor for collecting societies in Germany, was able to tell us whether all the legal documents that we provided would actually lead to us getting a permission to work as a collecting society. So for the last 3 years, from 2016 until now, we are working on this in a constant discussion with the state supervision, what we still need to change in our statutes and in the contracts and so on to actually then become a collecting society. So this is where we stand right now. For the last year or 1.5, we thought we are almost there, but then again we have to wait for feedback. Okay.
And what is it exactly that you are critiquing, and that you address and want to change?
Yeah, there are some core points where we thought that GEMA should work a bit differently from what it does right now. Obviously, we wanted to have Creative Commons licensing in a collecting society, because if you don't have that, then there's a clear line between using Creative Commons and being a professional artist. And we think this is an artificial gap that is between the two. And then we thought, so why is it that GEMA doesn't want these Creative Commons licenses in their body? And we, after talking to a lot of musicians and a lot of GEMA members who were also not very satisfied with the structures inside GEMA, we found out that only about 5% of the GEMA members actually can vote with one vote in the yearly assembly. And that is the 5%.
What?
Yeah.
Say that again. 5% of the GEMA membership, only 5% is authorized to vote on any issue inside GEMA.
Yeah, and that is because to become a regular member of GEMA, you must earn a certain amount of money. I think it's 15,000 euros over 5 years. and only then you can apply for the regular membership. And if you are a regular member, then you have one vote in the member assembly. And all other 95%, is roughly 95%, don't make enough money for that and are represented by delegates in the assembly with a key ratio. I think it's about 1,000 members for one delegate.
I think that's a key point of critique also, no?
We think that this is what both makes the GEMA work very stable, because only a few whom the service is working very good for are the ones who are calling the shots. But at the same time, it makes it very rigid. And the case of Creative Commons, we think, is one of these where GEMA acts too rigid. And that's what we wanted to change. Then, of course, the legal form that we have is a difference. One other thing that is very interesting, what we found out, is that if you make a contract with GEMA to be represented, you are signing all of your rights of the works to GEMA. So you can't decide for individual works when you want them to be licensed differently. And this is something that we also will change. So you make only a framework contract with us and then register individual works and decide for each work under which license conditions you want them to be represented by us, including the standard copyright, just like GEMA does, and then all of the 6 Creative Commons standard licenses.
Okay.
So many questions I want to ask you.
That's what we're here for.
Do you have one directly that you want to ask?
Well, just to clarification on, I've heard that in the EU you are allowed to withdraw your digital streaming rights from your PRO.
Yes, you can.
So you could be locked into a contract with GEMA for everything else, but you could say, I'm managing digital over here, and that's where you could go to Cobalt or somebody else like that.
You can actually do that for every kind of tariff that GEMA has. So you can withdraw your live rights. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. And
oh, wow.
Rammstein, for instance, is one of the famous bands who are known to have done that because they weren't satisfied. And they said that it's easier for them to discuss license terms with the big festivals themselves.
Wow. Because it's like, I mean, it's huge. The numbers are massive. 15% on a ticket at a festival. And what's the percentage of artists that actually know they can collect some money off of those ticket prices if they're in the collection society? And if they're not, who's it going to?
Yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, people who are organizing this...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's going to those people who can vote. That's where that money's going.
Yeah, so in theory, it would actually be possible to be a member of both GEMA and C3S at the same time if you decide that we do a certain aspect, like live rights or something, a bit better or more to your liking than GEMA does. So you can withdraw those rights there and give them to us once we have the permission.
And the permission's coming from?
The German Patent and Trademark Office.
German Patent and Trademark Office, which I'm sure moves even slower than GEMA, which is, I don't know if there are things that move slower than GEMA.
I actually can't say anything bad about the DPMA because, yes, they take some time. So, for instance, the last draft of our statutes we gave them in November and we are still waiting for feedback, which is, I think, the longest that we have ever waited, which maybe kind of desperation we interpret as a good sign. Because there's actually only one point in the statutes that we still were discussing, and we think we have fixed that. So this is probably like, okay, they have done everything, let's have another close look. I don't know. But when feedback comes, it's very, very useful. So they don't seem like they want to somehow block the project or something.
That's good.
I think these lawyers are actually very happy to do something different for a change.
Okay, I think we learned a bit about C3S and now about Resonate. Peter, when have you started?
I first started kicking around the idea in March of 2015 and spent about 6 months just talking to a bunch of artists about it, and had a basic web page, and was kind of working on it part-time for a while. And then I got a big boost out of the Platform Co-op conference in New York City. So, like C3S, Resonate is a cooperative. This is a business format where it meets there's one rule: one member, one share, one vote. Contrasted against the corporation, in which those with the most shares have the most votes. So that's the fundamental difference in terms of democracy inside business institutions. And so I thought that I had invented the concept of a platform co-op, but found out there was other people talking about it, and they had a conference in New York City in November 2015, and that really kind of helped kick things off. And so there was a period of time, there's been 3 distinct stages. The first stage was a volunteer stage. We had a small crowd campaign, raised a little bit of money. We got our first alpha version of the Stream to Own app up. It was running, artists could upload music, and we had the model. Our model is based on top up, so you buy some credits and then they get deducted as you play. And so we got, made a lot of progress, signed up several thousand artists and labels. And that led to the second stage, which was when we got some funding from a blockchain system out of the US called Archain. And on paper, it looked really good. It looked like they were going to give us $1 million US in their crypto token. And then last year was the long, slow slide of the crypto market. And so that ended up turning into about 600,000 in the end. So it lost 40% of its value. And that made it incredibly difficult to coordinate the team and budgets, and because we were in this we're expanding, we're contracting kind of mode for a while. And then the other major challenge of that phase was that the whole goal of that investment from the blockchain firm was to release a token, which we had slated for October. For anyone that's been following the crypto scene, that was the absolute bottom of the market. So we'd invested a lot of time and energy into this, what was really going to be the second round of funding through the token, and it was a dead market. There was no way to do it. So we kind of had to go into sort of a hibernation through the winter. Everyone's been calling it crypto winter. And but things are really kicking off again now that it's spring and winter's over. And so in this stage, we're really just focused on, the basics of getting the revenue and growth up and things like that. So we recently relaunched with all of the branding work that we had done last year. And we've gone open source, so all of our code base is starting to go up in stages. And so I'm very excited about the future in a lot of ways. And yet it's still we're up against the Death Star. I mean, I don't know how many artists would classify Gamma as the Death Star. I know there's quite a lot of artists that would classify Spotify as the Death Star. I can't help but use the analogy, having grown up in the as a Star Wars generation. But that's always the way it's sort of been to me. That there is a secret portal in which we can, use the Force and blast a thing that will end this sort of injustice that we see in these systems that exist. I can't help but be framed by that from having watched those movies as a kid. It's really messed with my head. But it's really what we're up against, because the reality is that the apps and services that we use every single day are funded by venture capital, and they have one motive and one motive only, which is, well, maybe it's not, I wouldn't say one motive. They have one motive of making money, but they have several strategies, and it's either that they're going to try to acquire hundreds of millions of users, or they're going to try and have the company get acquired by Amazon, Google, Facebook. So Spotify, I give them kudos for staying independent for a long time and not getting acquired, but Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple, these they're just technology devouring engines. They just swallow up startups with an appetite that just it just doesn't exist in any previous realm, and that's why Apple's like one of the most wealthy companies. Why Amazon's so incredibly powerful, because they've in Amazon's case, very rarely made a profit. In Apple's case, charged a huge premium on their products and has constantly reinvested it in acquiring other technologies. And so that's why I use the Death Star analogy, is that we are really up against this ridiculously resource-intensive kind of institutions and all that. But Luke did get it in. It blew up thing. So I've been talking way too long.
No,
apologies.
I just wanted to focus it. So you, because I asked also the question to Mike. So both the critique and how you are addressing it to change is you're a cooperative, but you said also you got this blockchain money. So this was just one share in the how did that work? This was not kind of capital investment.
Yeah, the only reason that I really kind of put so much effort into with that was that it's really outside the box of the normal VC investment. More normal VC investment is they take ownership of your company, and so that was never an option for us.
Okay.
And I can't tell you the number of VCs that were physically turned away when I said co-op. There's no interest in it at all because they can't own it. And so the novel thing about working with a blockchain system is that we could do a token swap, and so they can capture value in a different way outside of the equity model completely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And apart from that, from the financing kind of startup model, what else? I think there are a few other points that you are trying to address that you want to do differently. Maybe you can just briefly summarize that. Yeah,
well, I think really at the core of it, it's about music as art and culture. It's not content. Matt Dryhurst, who's going to be on after us, I don't know if he's arrived yet. He said this really poetically, really simply. He said when Daniel Ek from Spotify talks about having 1 million artists making a living off of their platform, the image that comes to mind is 1 million bedroom producers making music for people to take a shower to. It's like one of his talks, and it's like this is the content versus art and culture separation. Silicon Valley always refers to it as content, and for us, it's only art and culture. And so everything about how we're trying to build the organization is a reflection of that. From the service design to the community design, just through and through, is really trying to communicate that appreciation and that understanding. And, a huge number of our team, the volunteer base that's worked with us for years, they're all artists. Many of them are artists. And so there's this understanding of we're talking about something that's quite different, or we're trying to present something that's quite different.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. So now we have learned a bit what you two are about, and I said in the intro we wanted to learn from your process. Maybe start with the challenges. Like if you have to name maybe 3 things in your process that you have hit up against where you felt like this is really a problem, like in our process moving forward. It can also be only 2. I just. What would you mention?
When I thought about what was like the core problems that we had, it felt like there's 3 problems that are highly correlated. That is the funding, the staff that you can work with, and the time that you need to finish the project. And if you have plenty of one of them, then the other 2 are like no problem anymore. And the other thing is maybe legal issues, like the laws, especially for us. Because while we were working on the project, the laws were changing. And we were actually invited to comment on the changes. So we had experts, were able to send experts to the expert commission of the Bundestag while they were working on the new law, and hinted that there might be problems with regards to the compatibility of the German cooperation laws and the new collecting society law. They said no, it's all right. But thank you for your insight. And as it turned out, it actually became a problem. So we chose to become a European cooperative. And had we not done that, but simply founded a German cooperative, there's one certain aspect of both laws that are completely incompatible with each other. And that is how many members one member on the assembly can represent. The German Cooperative Act says you can represent up to 2 members, but no more. And the Collecting Society law says you must be able to represent at least 10. So you can't do both. And there would probably be a solution for that, but you need a lot of lawyers and a lot of time to find out which of these laws is the one superior. But since we are a European cooperative, that was no problem for us because the SCE directive is more flexible in that regard.
Okay. And which three? We go more into the different points together. I think want to start more a conversation rather than individual interview. So, Peter, those 3 points where you think those are the biggest challenges for us, what would you name?
I'd have to agree. It's really the same stuff.
Okay.
I mean, funding is the number one problem because trying to do technology under the co-op model is a Herculean task. No, or is it maybe Sisyphus might be a better. It is pushing a rock up a hill, and you think you're over the hill, and then it just falls right back down, and you start all over again. But again, that the Star Wars metaphor, it's just like it's so embedded in my nervous system that there must be a way to hack the system. It has just kept me going through these years, through so many years that I just haven't given up yet. And I feel I'm glad that I haven't, because I think we are super close from. I mean, we're just about to cross the 10,000 member mark, and we've maybe another couple of weeks, and it does feel like it's poised to explode if we can get a couple of things sort of lined up to make certain processes more efficient. Then that could certainly happen fairly quickly. So I'm optimistic, but again, I also circle back to we're just up against ridiculous resources in comparison, and so in a way, the whole thing does really depend on a very big paradigm shift occurring on the part of every single member that comes into the organization, and it can happen in stages. You get some people that come in and they're zealots and they're incredibly enthusiastic and they know like this is the only way forward, and there are others that are like, wow, this kind of looks cool, I'll try it, and then they don't do much. But I really mean it that we're talking about a fundamental paradigm shift that is much more about, is this a better music or more better streaming platform? Is it more ethical? Is it more fair to artists? To some of the bigger issues of, can I own this organization, and what does it mean for me to own this organization? And to be an equal to every other person in this organization, because this is just, it's so outside the box of what everyone's used to. That I think for the long-term game, it's really going to be about that, because we're up against too much money, and they can always out-engineer, and And yet, if the membership does have that sort of paradigm shifting, transformation, then we have the chance of being the Rebel Alliance. I really should stop making the fucking Star Wars metaphor.
Do the members, are they buying how do you say this in a cooperative? It's not a share, or is it the same name?
Share.
It's a share. Okay.
Yeah, so we're multi-stakeholder, which means we have different departments or classes of shares, and so the artists and labels earn their share by contributing music to the platform. A volunteer earns their share by working, or a staff earns their share by working, and then a listener buys their share for €5 a year.
Okay.
And that's a typical reflection of worker-consumer co-ops in a multi-stakeholder model. If that's too many words.
However, those numbers don't feel like you can pay like very qualified technical programmers and stuff like this from the money you're raising.
At the moment, no.
Yeah.
At the moment, we are.
So how you?
We've got a small budget, and we are depending on a lot of volunteer support at the moment. But the projections look good in terms of growth, that we can get to self-sufficiency. And I mean, Bandcamp is a proof of this. Bandcamp's been profitable for 5 years or something, every single quarter. So what that says is there is a market that supports independent music culture, and Bandcamp's thriving in that sense. So it's totally possible, economically to do it. Would we ever get close to having the same kind of, technical build as Spotify or Apple Music? No, probably not. But we may have a larger cultural impact if all of the weirdos, for lack of a better term, come play with us.
I think it's a totally different mindset if you work on a project, and what you want to achieve is some kind of sustainability of the project, so that enough money comes in to keep the project alive and maybe grow it a little bit, but not like VCs would probably like you to become the next king of the market or something.
Yeah,
and buy other businesses or stuff like that. I think we are very similar in that regard, that we are not even thriving for that.
Yeah, I always laugh when somebody asks that question. They say, well, what happens when somebody comes along and tries to acquire you? And I'd say, well, the entire membership, or a majority of the membership, would have to vote to approve that for it to happen, and then they would lose all access to it, and they wouldn't own it anymore. So I don't think that's likely, and that usually ends the conversation. But there again, this is the paradigm shifting kind of idea here that people really need to internalize.
Yeah. So even if it's not a mainstream tool, there can still be enough people interested in it for it to be able to be sustainable.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of market research that says that shows that in the music business there is a small percentage at the top that spend most of the money on everything, streaming, shows, merchandise, etc. And that's who we're interested in. We're interested in those that are passionate about music. I was at a friend's house, and he's just got 2 walls lined with vinyl, and he doesn't have a membership account on any streaming service. He still reads magazines to find out what's happening, and then he orders the record. And there are people out there that are spending a ridiculous amount of money on music that care about. They bought something from the person who made it. Somebody made that record and they bought it from them, and it's a meaningful thing to them. And so that's what we want to try to bring back, because that doesn't exist on these other platforms. And the perfect kind of example of this is all of the stories about a new artist that gets onto a playlist, makes a couple of $1,000s or euros in a month, and thinks they've hit the big time, and then they get pulled from the playlist, their earnings drop off to nothing, and they have no fan base. And so that's the content model versus an art and culture model, which is, we want you to grow your fan base here and own it and interact with them and go on a journey with them through your career. And it's just a completely different paradigm.
Mike, how would you describe this for you when we're talking about money and membership? And is this the similar kind of model for you, or how are you financing yourself, and how many kind of people or resources do you need to be sustainable?
It's a bit different. We have two kinds of membership. We have regular members, which are the authors of music, whom we want to represent later on. And then we allow investing membership. So investing members also buy shares, but the difference is that they don't have any voting rights on the General Assembly. But they can give feedback and they can join the discussion. And we did this because we found out that there are a lot of people who wanted this project to become reality and wanted to somehow fund it. And then we found out that cooperations can actually allow investment memberships. But this is not the money that we can actually pay the running bills of, because the shares that people buy in a cooperative should be invested in values that are there tomorrow. Because if a member leaves, they can ask for the money for the share back. So if we just spend this on rent, then it's gone, and this would probably become a problem later on. So we had to introduce membership fees a few years ago, and it was really a hard time, because from the start on we said we wouldn't have membership fees until we start actually having a service for you. So we had a long and open discussion with our members, but they all understood that without these membership fees, there is certain money that we need to, for instance, we have a part-time office employee for the whole bureaucracy that such an undertaking needs, and she must be paid, and we have a headquarters where we have to pay rent, and it's not really a lot of money if you think about what we are trying to do, but it has to come from somewhere. So our members agreed to pay this membership fee, and we really haven't lost any members. There were a couple, but it's a one-digit number, so it's really not much. We have about 1,000 members at the moment. And there are still a lot of people who are voluntarily giving us money.
Cool.
And those three angles of financing are what currently make this a sustainable project.
Okay, cool. I mean, that you both kind of also envision to be able to survive, without brands funding or public funding or all those things that you kind of...
Yeah, next to being a cooperative, which, yes, scares away VCs, we have another thing that they don't like to hear, and that is that collecting societies are not the usual business, but they are like a fiduciary service or an escrow trust. So it's not our money, and we can't pay them any benefits on their shares for it. So it's not a real investment for a lot of people.
Maybe on another point that you have mentioned, time. How do you, because for example for C3S, I had, before we did research again to see, we had the idea to do this talk, I had somehow the feeling that maybe it doesn't exist anymore, or I hadn't heard about it for a while. Does like you being already like doing this for, I think it was 9 years, no? does this contribute to people losing interest, going away? Is this a difficulty for you?
I'm sorry, was that?
I'm asking him, but you can also, maybe you first, because I took you as an example, and you're longer also.
There have been rumors that we are dead for quite some time, but...
the rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated.
Yeah, exactly. No, but we actually pulled back from all the PR stuff on purpose because it was such a drain on resources at one point, especially after we had no big funding anymore, and we just knew we have only so many resources, we can do only so many with that. Let's not go to every conference and talk about the project. But rather concentrate on really get the permission to actually work. And so we concentrated on communicating with our members or people who follow us on Twitter or something, but not do the large events or press releases or stuff like that. And I think our members are thanking us for that because every now and then we can show them now the repertoire management is at this stage, here's a screencast, look at it. And we are currently in the beta test phase for the repertoire management software that we've developed. So they see a progress, but it's not, we are not so in your face with that on purpose.
But it didn't like drive people away, like you.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, every now and then somebody asks, "So, are you still working on this?" And when he gets an answer to the email, he just knows, "Yes, we do."
Yeah, I mean, this is a question that kind of lingers in the back of my mind pretty much every day. And on two fronts. One is people that signed up a while ago and concerned about, like, is this actually making progress? And like, for instance, we had a pretty major electronic label sign up, and their catalog is, they signed up like 3 years ago, and their catalog is just about to go live. I'm sitting there waiting to just like click a bunch of buttons and make it go live at a critical moment. And I'm always like nail biting, wondering like, okay, let's hope that they don't send an email this week asking when is it going up. So there's that kind of stuff. But and then just also the pace of development, you know, like waiting for you know, upgrades and new features and things and fixes and stuff like that, that it doesn't happen as fast as they are accustomed to. And so we're just constantly in a communication thing with the membership and just explaining, like, yeah, we don't have hundreds of millions of dollars in Wall Street money to just keep, you know, fueling this engine. But as long as there is continual progress and they do see new changes coming and new releases and things, then it does help a lot. But I think most of the people that are there, they're like your membership. It's like there's an understanding of this is a completely different dynamic, and so they can't expect the same output. And so it's just really about communicating that constantly to the new people that come in, helping them understand where things are at.
And how are you keeping yourselves and your team motivated? And like, is it, you probably also need to put, like, if you're speaking about volunteer time, you put maybe in lots of hours, and like, I don't, how does that work for you?
We always try to combine the work with something that is fun as much as we can, because this is really everything that the project can pay back to people. So it would really be, we had some cases actually with people who were at the brink of burnout, or really said, okay, I need to take a step back because they were invested too much. And this is something that we take really serious. As you said, I'm a psychologist, so this is something that there's a red light going on when we had the first case of somebody with symptoms of burnout. And I think this is something that a lot of volunteer projects have problems with. So working on your time management is a key role. Family is something that can be both a resource or a burden, depending on how you're able to incorporate your project with that, or your friends, or like my band, which is something that is very important to me personally, where I can just be what I am and don't have to be successful with that. And I think you need those different resources to relax and to keep your motivation up, especially in times where it's not working as you thought you would like it to go.
Constant challenge, constant adaptation.
Yeah. Looking at the time. Thinking about, so I have like 2 questions here that I still wanted to ask and get questions from the audience. Which one do I prioritize? This. So maybe if you look at yourself or your project in the overall music environment, do you feel there could be things that change in the environment that would be beneficial for you, or that you feel, oh, if this and this would be happening, that would be very helpful?
If people were different, that would help. So I mean, generally, I think what we are trying is to change, and we need to do it because the change doesn't just come on its own. So I don't know which particular part of the world would need to change for us to be just different, because we wouldn't have to be if it was different. We never wanted actually to found a collecting society. That was never something that we had in mind. We just did it because we saw that somebody must do it. So many people were talking about, oh, that would be so great if there was an alternative to GEMA, but nobody was actually doing the job. So we said, okay, we have some time, let's just do it. But I never expected to take 9 or 10 years. If I had known that from the beginning, I probably wouldn't have started.
A really practical point would be, I would hope that the EU would support the cooperative movement, especially technology co-ops across the continent, because there's a huge recognition that things have gotten really fucked up. They fined Google billions of dollars. There's this constant recognition that everything is out of order, everything's out of whack with data and privacy, and the Silicon Valley model of technology development. And they've even put some money around, there's the Next Generation Internet or something like this, which is about what some call Web3 and decentralization and all that. But I think that they haven't quite seen that missing gap, which is the co-op model, which is democratically organized and owned enterprises. And so that's something I really love to see.
And if there is like one thing you would like tell others that you could share as a lesson learned from your process, apart from the ones that we've talked about already? Just as we are coming to like question, if there's, I just want to make sure you have like shared like the main points you would like to.
Maybe one sentence: do it anyway.
Okay, that's good. That works.
Okay. Let's maybe open. Are there any questions from the audience? It's very. If not, we can continue. Like I have more.
Okay.
I mean,
it's impossible to see out here.
I had one question here also about dealing with complexity, like, because especially in the field that you're both into, like it's technology, you have to deal with the whole licensing, like legal things, metadata, and everything. Like, how do you? Like, to me, it seems kind of you need like a big organization, like to be able to deal with all those questions that to me seem very complicated. And I'm wondering, like, how big are your teams, and how many, like, how are you managing like all those requirements?
There's only one way to answer that from my point of view, and that's be like water.
Oh, that's poetic.
I'm not sure if that answers my question.
Yeah, no. You have to adapt, and you have to be fluid and change constantly. And the thing about water is that it will find its way through any problem, any environment, and it's the only way to be in this game is to be able to constantly adapt. I think we've lost a lot of people over the years on volunteers who, like, that was difficult for them. To adapt, because that's just the name of it, I think, because it is trying to innovate on too many different fronts at once, and you can't pull out one from the other.
And how big is your team? Like,
it depends on how you define it. You know, if you were to try to define it against full-time hours, then it's about 4 people, but 2 of those are a conglomeration of a lot of people. If you think about how many are active in the community, it's really seriously active. It's hundreds, and then the total membership is, like I said, it's close to 10,000. And so, the goal is to try to, kind of hack the organization into a frenzy of activity, and that's what I'm really excited about, because we're very close to that.
So if people who are here now or who watch this later on a video wanted to support you, can they come up to you and say, "Hey, I want to do something"?
Yes. It's not, we haven't quite pushed out some of those requests. There, you can find them. You can kind of if you go into the blog and read the right article, you can find the link. It's not really front and center, and that's more for organizational and technical reasons. But it is there. And we're really starting to get ramped up on a whole bunch of new systems to make that process easier. So I think that it will become more visible and front and center. It will have to be to sustain.
And how about you? Yeah.
Same here. So if you really want to get into it and help us, then just get in touch, and we'll get you in touch with the people working on what you would like to do, be it PR or be it developing or whatever. Or if you are a lawyer and want to give advice, we are constantly open for that. And that's how our team is built, actually.
How many? Sorry. No.
Go ahead.
I just want. How many people do you have on your team right now? About?
Yeah, it's fairly stable. About 20 people who are active. That is every other week. There's a phone conference, so we exchange each other constantly and on the mailing list. And there's about a handful of people currently working on the code.
Mm-hmm. You wanted to say?
I was just going to plug, if you're a developer, go to GitHub, Resonate Co-op. If you're a music lover or an artist, you find us on Twitter, same handle. There's lots of things to do. And a lot of them are having fun, so that's the important part.
If there's another question, I can. I have a few more. I think we have maybe time for one. Maybe. What's your outlook? What do you think? So maybe divided in 2 points. One concrete thing I'm interested in: how many people do you think you need in order to be there where you can start or feel, or how many people do you think you need when you say, oh, now we are successful, like now we can operate without worries?
That's hard to say, because for us the most important number is the economic value of the repertoire that we are representing. So it's not about how many people we have, but how much money do they make with their music, because that is something that will then later pay for the bills of the collecting society. And it's really hard to say how much repertoire that is, that we are still figuring that out, because a lot of what we are currently discussing with the DPMA will have an impact on the official business model that we also need to provide. So if certain things are okay, then we need so many people, and if or so many repertoire, and if certain things are not, then it's a different number. So we really can't say that.
I don't know if it's 100,000 or 500,000 to be really like a solid self-sustaining thing. I mean, I've looked at the numbers going out that far. The challenge is not really being sure exactly how much engineering and customer service, talent we need on board. But it's probably in that realm. And like I said, Bandcamp's the proof that this is possible for on our side. So I am very hopeful of that. On the bigger picture, I'm really, really hopeful, because I feel that what we're doing, and this may sound a little bit crazy at first, but I really think that what we're doing is connected to a much larger shift that is inevitable. And that larger shift is a strange intersection of, and just go with me a little bit on this a little bit, climate change, digitalization, and the end of capitalism. Okay, so I didn't know. Yeah, so, and I lost my head to that. Volume. Yeah. Those three things are coming at us with a force and a ferocity that we have no comprehension of, very little comprehension of. I think the teenagers do, and I think that's why they're out on the streets when it comes to climate change. I don't think anybody has an understanding of how absolutely terrifying is the force of weaponized capital in the digital technology space. We're just starting to see the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandals is one part of that. But it's minuscule in comparison to what is coming online in 5 years. And weaponized capital is this economic engine that is able to invest unlimited resources to achieve unethical goals. Trump and Brexit are the result of that process unfolding, and it's going to get much worse. And then the third thing is the end of capitalism. And for that topic, I would just refer to Paul Mason's book, which, he looks at lots of different sectors there. And, it's basically toast. It's going to take maybe a couple decades, but it's gone. It's not going to function in any way, shape, or form in the way that we know it. So these are good things and bad things. And why does a music streaming platform have any relevance to this whatsoever? And why? And this is what actually is the thing that gets me out of bed every day. It's not making a better music player. Because we can't make a better music player. I mean, in a way we can, because we're not going to do algorithms and all that, but so what? It's the idea that what we're actually doing is talking about engagement and empowerment in an organization that's meeting in the digital space and saying, this is yours, you own it, get involved and do something. And that the hope is that sense of empowerment and that sense of ownership will reverberate out and will affect other spheres and people that came into their first cooperative through a music platform will then start saying, well, what else can I own? You know, oh, and then they'll go, oh, wait a minute, this is a housing cooperative. I can own this building together with these other people. Or, oh, the grocery store, yeah, that's obvious. I can own the grocery store. You know, and that this will just kind of reverberate out. And that's what I mean by this intersection with the end of capitalism and digitalization and all this kind of things. And the reorganization of society that will occur as a result of climate change. These things are going to intersect at some strange point in the future, and I think we're out of time.
Yeah, but I like the note we're ending on.
I'd like to end big.
Thank you, Peter. Are you okay to end here, Mike, or do you have anything to add to this? I think we have to kind of...
No, just can somebody get me a beer?
Okay, thank you very much.
We